The moment Elizabeth Hart stepped out of her limousine, the entire wedding venue froze, not because she was a billionaire everyone recognized, but because of the man who walked beside her. Tall, calm, visibly nervous in a borrowed suit, Marcus Reed looked like he didn't belong in a world full of chandeliers, designer gowns, and champagne walls. Yet when the groom turned around, the color drained from his face. His voice cracked as he whispered a single word no one expected him to say. Boss. And in that instant, the truth none of them were prepared for began to unravel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected connections, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heart Tale. Your support means everything. Elizabeth never planned for any of this. She had built her empire from sleepless nights, painful losses, and a childhood that taught her to trust no one. She was the older sister, the protector, the achiever, the one who everyone pointed to whenever success was mentioned in the family. Yet none of her accomplishments ever made her feel less alone. Her life was full of boardrooms, headlines, and meetings at 3 a.m., but painfully empty of real human warmth. So when her sister Claire's wedding approached, Elizabeth dreaded attending alone once again, standing in a room full of people pretending to understand love. But Marcus didn't enter her life by chance. It started months earlier when Elizabeth's car broke down in a quiet neighborhood on a rainy evening. While dozens of people passed by, a single father pushing a stroller stopped. Marcus, exhausted from a double shift, clothes soaked in the rain, and his daughter asleep on his shoulder, offered to help without hesitation. He refused any payment, simply saying, "Just trying to teach my little girl that we help when we can." That moment stayed with Elizabeth longer than she expected. Over time, she learned his truth. Marcus wasn't just a struggling single dad. He was a man who once ran a small security company that collapsed after he took the blame for someone else's mistake. He lost everything: his savings, his home, his reputation. All he had left was his 2-year-old daughter, Hope, and the determination to build a safer world for her. Elizabeth admired him more than she ever admitted. His kindness felt like something she had been craving for years. So when Claire insisted that Elizabeth bring a date to avoid the family gossip, she impulsively asked Marcus. He almost said no. He felt out of place in her world. He didn't want to embarrass her, but Elizabeth wasn't inviting him to impress others. She wanted to walk beside someone whose presence made her feel human, someone whose honesty held more value than diamonds. The wedding venue was a stunning villa overlooking a lake, filled with families, celebrities, and business tycoons who whispered the moment Elizabeth arrived. Marcus felt eyes burning into him from every corner, but Elizabeth gently touched his arm, reminding him that he belonged anywhere she was willing to stand. Inside, Claire ran to embrace Elizabeth, whispering how happy she was that her serious, untouchable big sister finally brought someone. Elizabeth smiled, pretending not to notice the curious glances aimed at Marcus. Everything seemed normal until Claire's groom, Daniel, spotted them. His smile died, his hands trembled, and then he called Marcus by a name Elizabeth had never heard. Bossy. The music faded. Conversation stopped. Elizabeth stared in confusion as Daniel took a step back like he had seen a ghost. That was when Marcus's eyes hardened, not in anger but in recognition, the kind that comes from being betrayed. This groom wasn't just some stranger marrying her sister. He was the man who Marcus once trusted with a crucial contract at his old security company. The same man who caused the disastrous mistake, shifted the blame onto Marcus, and walked away without consequence. Daniel's actions had destroyed Marcus's business, his reputation, and nearly cost him custody of Hope. And now, here he was, about to marry Elizabeth's beloved sister. The weight of the truth crashed into Elizabeth like a storm. She watched Marcus stand silently, swallowing years of buried pain. She saw her sister looking between them in fear, not understanding the sudden shift in the air. And she felt something ignite inside her: anger, protectiveness, and a deep, unmistakable responsibility toward the man who once fixed her car in the rain, asking for nothing in return. Elizabeth didn't create scenes. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she calmly asked Daniel to explain himself. His lies trembled out half-formed, falling apart under the pressure of guilt and Marcus's quiet strength. Soon the entire room knew the truth, that Daniel had climbed into success on the broken pieces of another man's life. Claire's heartbreak was immediate, but Elizabeth held her sister, promising that truth was better than living in a future built on deceit. And in that moment of chaos and revelation, something unexpected happened. The guests didn't look at Marcus with pity, they looked at him with respect. He wasn't just a single dad in a borrowed suit. He was a man who suffered, survived, and still chose kindness over bitterness. The wedding dissolved into tears, apologies, and painful decisions, but Elizabeth stayed by Marcus's side, her hand never leaving his. For the first time in her life, she didn't care what the world thought. She had found someone who reminded her of compassion, of humility, of real humanity. As the evening sun dipped behind the lake, Claire thanked Marcus for unknowingly saving her from a lifetime of regret. Elizabeth watched the two of them, realizing that sometimes the people who enter our lives quietly are the ones who change everything. That night, as she sat beside Marcus and little Hope, who had wrapped her tiny arms around Elizabeth in innocent affection, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. And in the soft glow of the fading sunset, Elizabeth understood that her life of wealth had always been missing something far more valuable: a heartbeat that matched hers. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heart Tale. Your support encourages more stories like this. Before the story ends, please comment below. What would you have done if you were in Elizabeth's place? And with that question lingering in the air, the story closes. Not with an ending, but with a beginning neither Elizabeth nor Marcus ever expected. A future